This is another podcast from Alpha Business Media. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take source materials, unpack them, and really get you the essential insights, the things you need to know.
Yep. Fast and focused.
Today, we're digging into Nepal's tourism scene, specifically looking at things as they stand around mid-2025.
That's right. We've got a study here that tries to look past the big announcements.
Right, beyond the ribbon cuttings for the new airport.
Exactly. To see what's actually changed on the ground by mid-2025.
So our mission today, using this source material, is to get a real sense of the impact of those two big new international airports, Pokhara, or PIA, and Bhairahawa, GBIA.
Who's actually benefiting? Are the old problems still there? And are there any surprises, any unexpected shifts in Nepal's tourism map?
So if you're trying to understand how these big infrastructure projects actually play out, or the challenges in tourism development, or how global trends meet local realities, well, this deep dive is for you.
Let's jump in.
Okay, let's start with the big news items first, the airports. Pokhara International Airport, PIA. Huge project, right? Linked to the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah, big investment. Around $215.96 million US dollars. It officially opened January 1st, 2023.
But the source points out something pretty striking immediately, despite opening then.
It waited 27 months, over 2 years.
For a regular, scheduled international flight.
That's right. Until April 1st, 2025. Before that, it was mostly handling international charter flights.
How many charters are we talking?
The source says only about 13 since it opened, mostly coming from China. Sichuan Airlines ran some, and apparently Air Astra from Bangladesh showed some recent interest.
But no regular service until April 2025. And that first flight from La Sierra, the numbers weren't huge, were they?
No, quite modest. 107 arrivals, just 30 departures. It paints a picture of a very slow start for international scheduled traffic.
Domestic flights are using it, though.
Oh yeah, domestic is active. Buddha Air, Yeti, Sri Airlines, they're flying to Kathmandu and other cities from PIA.
So here's the gap, right? The expectation versus what's happening now, mid-2025. The contractor, CMC Engineering, was talking big numbers.
They were, claiming over 900,000 passengers for 2023, nearly a million for 2024. But the source suggests this likely rolled in all that domestic traffic.
And the reality for international?
Well, the Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal, CAAN, actually reported overall flight cuts, not increases. So PIA is clearly finding it tough to attract regular international carriers.
Even with incentives, I thought they waived fees.
They did. Landing, parking, ground handling waived for 2 years.
Yeah.
But factors like high fuel costs are still mentioned as, a major hurdle for airlines.
They are pushing it, though. There are campaigns.
Definitely. Visit Pokhara year 2025, aiming for 2 million tourists. And China's got its Visit Nepal year 2025, which the source explicitly links to boosting traffic for this BRI airport project.
Okay, but the source suggests there's more to the story, some serious underlying problems.
Yeah, this is where it gets pretty concerning. Remember that $215 million price tag?
Yes.
A parliamentary inquiry in April 2025 alleged corruption. About $106 million worth.
Wait, $106 million out of $216 million. That's nearly half.
It's a huge figure reported in the source. And it wasn't just financial issues.
What else?
The inquiry apparently found significant design flaws, specifically the runway being built 20 feet below ground level.
Below ground level? How does that affect things?
It apparently makes the PAPI lights those crucial visual aids for pilots landing, especially in bad weather and operative.
So,
a very serious problem. The underutilization, the corruption cloud, the design flaws, it casts a long shadow over PIA.
Okay, let's shift focus south then, to Gautam Buddha International Airport, GBIA, in Bhairahawa. Gateway to Lumbini, opened May 2022.
Right, and they did make efforts to get it running smoothly. By March 2025, they introduced this RNPAR system.
Which is meant to help with
navigation, basically. Satellite-based, more precise flight paths. It was aimed at fixing earlier problems they had with the instrument landing system, the ILS, and weather disruptions.
So a technical fix. Sounds like they were addressing issues. But the situation by May 2025 wasn't great.
No. Actually, the source says international flights were suspended as of May 2025.
Suspended? Why?
Because airlines just hadn't applied for the summer flight slots.
What?
Which is interesting because earlier reports mentioned several airlines flying in February 2025. Fly Dubai, Jazeera, Thai AirAsia.
So a contradiction there. What happened?
It's unclear from the source details, but the outcome was suspension. Jazeera Airways is mentioned later as possibly the only one listed with direct flights in 2025 info, but even that seems unstable.
What about passenger numbers at GBIA before the suspension? Were they steady?
Highly volatile. There was a peak in February 2025, maybe linked to pilgrimage season, around 6,800 international passengers.
Uh,
But January saw only about 1,365. The Jan-March total was roughly 13,000, and the source thinks that probably includes domestic and transit people too.
so again, severe underutilization.
Definitely. And the source notes this is hitting local hotels that invested expecting steady international traffic.
What are the core problems cited for GBIA, similar to PIA?
Some overlap, yeah. Lack of sustained airline interest, despite incentives. Geopolitics around air corridors with India, given its border location.
And practical issues, too.
Right. Many travelers, especially those needing visas or permits, still have to process things in Kathmandu. That kind of reduces the convenience of flying directly into Bhairahawa.
So its success is really tied to specific markets, like pilgrims and migrant workers.
Heavily tied. But those markets seem unstable or hard to capture consistently through GBIA, based on these volatile numbers and the suspension.
Looking at the comparison in the source, it really highlights the similarities, doesn't it? Both new airports, years after opening, struggling with very low, unstable international traffic.
It's quite striking. PIA has the added weight of the corruption and design flaw scandals, plus northern air corridor issues. GBIA faces its own operational instability and the Kathmandu dependency issue.
It shows that just building the airport isn't nearly enough.
Not even close. The whole system, airlines, government processes, ground transport, passenger demand, it all has to work together. And by mid-2025, it clearly wasn't clicking for either PIA or GBIA on the international front.
Okay, let's zoom out. What about Nepal's overall tourism? How's the recovery looking generally by mid-2025?
The overall trend is recovery. They passed 1 million tourists in 2023, hit over 1.14 million in 2024. So numbers are definitely up from the pandemic lows.
And the start of 2025, January to May.
A bit of a mixed bag. Total arrivals were just over 500,000. January was strong, almost pre-COVID levels.
But then,
February and March actually saw year-on-year declines compared to 2024.
declines. That's unexpected during a recovery phase. Any reason why?
The source links it significantly to disruptions at Kathmandu's airport, TIA. But then April was huge.
Huge how?
A record month. 116,490 arrivals. That's more than double the pre-COVID April 2019 number. May was lower again.
So a Q1 dip, potentially linked to TIA issues, then a massive April surge as maybe those eased.
That seems to be the connection the source makes, which really underlines TIA's importance.
Right. Tribhuvan International in Kathmandu. Even with PIA and GBIA open, it's still the main player.
Absolutely dominant. Handled almost 5 million international passengers in 2024. It's the gateway.
And it was undergoing major upgrades.
It was from late 2024 into early 2025. Building a parallel taxiway, expanding the apron area, adding hangar space. Necessary work, but disruptive.
How disruptive?
Caused reduced operating hours, flight schedule cuts, higher fares. The source even mentions a World Bank estimate that these TIA disruptions trimmed almost 1% off Nepal's GDP growth.
Wow. Just the airport disruption.
Shows how central TIA is. Its performance directly impacts the national economy and tourism figures.
So the fact that problems at TIA had such a big impact, even with the new airports operational, confirms TIA isn't being replaced. It's being upgraded because it is the core.
Precisely. The new airports are meant to complement, not supplant, TIA. By March 2025, the upgrades were about 60% done, and crucially, the daily closure times were reduced from April.
Likely helping that April surge we saw.
Very likely. And there's more planned budget allocated to turn TIA into a boutique international airport, improving passenger experience, reflecting Nepali culture.
Beyond the airport work, lots of promotional campaigns are running too. Are they moving the needle?
Well, there are quite a few. Visit Pokhara year 2025. China's Visit Nepal year 2025, explicitly tied to boosting PIA traffic. Koshi Province's tourism year.
Koshi Province. That's interesting. What's their angle?
They're promoting 82 sites, focusing on domestic tourism, but also heavily on border tourism with India. They're even lobbying on practical things, like currency limits for Indian tourists. Very targeted.
And there's Community Connect 2025.
Right, aimed at community-based tourism. Plus, the proposed digital nomad visa.
The digital nomad visa. Tell me more about that.
It's in the works for 2025. Targeting remote workers. Requirements mentioned are things like income over $1,500 a month or $20K in the bank, significant health insurance, and a 5% tax after 183 days. It's a 5-year visa proposal.
So lots of activity, lots of campaigns. But are they enough?
They show intent, definitely. But the source is clear. Success depends on fixing the fundamental issues: connectivity, road quality, travel costs, safety perception.
The China campaign is very specifically about PIA's viability.
Seems directly linked, yes. The digital nomad visa is promising for attracting high-value visitors, but likely small numbers initially in 2025. The community sustainable focus does align well with global trends, though.
Okay, so it seems like the big airport investments haven't radically changed the map by mid-2025. But the source mentions unexpected leaders. What does that mean in this context?
It's less about places suddenly booming because of the new airports and more about regions showing significant potential or ambition for growth, even if they aren't traditional hubs.
Places developing new products, marketing themselves well, maybe benefiting indirectly.
Exactly. Though the source cautions it's hard to quantify this yet with hard data for mid-2025 because that direct airport impact just hasn't materialized strongly.
So who are these potential unexpected leaders?
Koshi Province in the east is a prime example highlighted. Their active tourism year, promoting numerous sites, and that very practical focus on Indian border tourism.
Right, they're showing initiative even without being near PIA or GBIA,
Yeah.
strategically targeting India.
Precisely. The surprise is their ambition and strategy, not a direct airport link. Their growth could come from better national awareness, or maybe indirectly if TIA becomes less congested, freeing up domestic flights to their region like Bharatnagar.
What about really remote areas?
Potential there too, in places like Karnali in the West Midwest, traditionally underserved. Road projects like the Karnali Corridor are slowly improving access.
So the potential is for better connections if the whole air system improves.
Yes, if domestic connections to smaller airfields get better as a result of changes at TIA or the new airports, it's more future potential than mid-2025 reality. Community Connect initiatives also fit here, diversifying tourism locations.
And niche tourism, like wellness or new trekking routes.
That's another area of potential. Global trends favor sustainability, wellness, new adventure trails beyond the classics like Manaslu, Kanchenjunga, Mundum, health, cultural tourism too.
Could the new airports help access these?
Potentially, yes. If these regions develop strong products, market them well, and if that internal connectivity improves, the surprise would be seeing significant growth in these specialized niches.
So by mid-2025, it's less about proven new leaders driven by the airports and more about seeing ambition and potential in places like Koshi or in niche sectors.
That's a fair summary of the source's perspective for mid-2025. The potential is visible, but the measurable shift driven by PIA-GBIA isn't there yet in these areas.
Okay, let's tie this all together. What are the really critical factors shaping Nepal's tourism map right now based on this source?
Infrastructure weaknesses remain huge, especially roads. The source really hammers this. You land at a shiny new airport, but that 10-12-hour drive from Kathmandu to Pokhara, that's a massive bottleneck.
A last mile problem.
Exactly.
Fine.
And domestic air travel costs, VAT makes it expensive. Plus, operational limits even at the new airports, like lack of full-night flying or PIA's PPI light issue. The whole system needs to work.
And factors beyond tourism infrastructure, politics, perception.
Hugely important. Nepal being put on the FATF gray list in Feb 2025. That's significant.
Financial Action Task Force. Affects financial transactions, reputation.
Yes. Creates risks, potentially deters investment, impacts how easily tourists can conduct business. It hurts the overall perception of stability and trustworthiness.
And ongoing issues like political stability.
That always plays a role in investment confidence. The corruption allegations around PIA don't help the international image either. Add concerns about safety perception from protests or past incidents, and growing air pollution. These macro issues are critical.
But there are opportunities, too. Changing course preferences.
A major opportunity, yes. The global shift towards sustainable, community-based tourism. Nepal's well-positioned for that with initiatives like Community Connect, diversifying adventure routes, health, cultural tourism.
And the digital nomad visa fits here, too.
It does. Tapping into that longer stay, potentially higher spend market, the new airports could help access areas offering these experiences. If they're integrated well with domestic travel, and if the regions develop and market the right products effectively, it's a big opportunity to differentiate.
Okay, final thoughts. Bringing this deep dive to a close. Mid-2025, what's the verdict on the new airports reshaping the map?
The takeaway is, they're operational, but severely underutilized for international flights by mid-2025. They're facing major issues: operational instability, the PIA scandals, air corridor problems, reliance on Kathmandu for procedures. They haven't fundamentally decentralized traffic from TIA yet.
So, not the revolution some expected?
Much more evolutionary. Change is happening, but it's driven as much by national campaigns, TIA's own status and upgrades, and these broader economic and political factors, as it is by the direct limited impact of PIA and GBIA so far.
And those unexpected leaders.
Still mostly potential and ambition, like Koshi's strategic push, rather than proven shifts directly caused by the new airports, according to this mid-2025 snapshot.
So it's a picture of progress mixed with persistent, significant vulnerability.
Definitely. Successes like overall recovery, that record April, government efforts, the focus on niche tourism, but balanced against the troubled new airports, ongoing infrastructure gaps like roads, market stagnation from India-China early in the year, the FATF listing shadow, and governance concerns.
So understanding Nepal's tourism future isn't just about counting airports.
Not at all. It's about seeing how this new, troubled infrastructure interacts with old challenges, how global trends and politics play in, and how local initiatives and catering to new tourist demands might be creating different pathways for growth.
It makes you wonder, given all the problems with these big, expensive airports and the rise of these niche, sustainable, community-focused initiatives, could the real transformation of Nepal's tourism map actually come more from attracting the right tourists to new kinds of experiences, rather than just building bigger gateways?
That's a fascinating question, something for you to definitely think about.